Okay, welcome everybody to the Reel to Reel movie review we do every week. This week we are covering Enemy Mine with Dennis Quaid, and I'm here with Dean Kevin, and I'm Dean Val. We have a guest here, and some more people may be joining us a little bit later here. In the late 21st century, 2092 was mentioned here in the movie. An interstellar war between humans, associated as the Bilateral Terran Alliance, or BTA, and the Drax, bipedal reptilian humanoids, is fought. Battles are periodically fought between fighter spacecraft, and no human hates the Drax more than Willis E. Davidge, played by Dennis Quaid. During one such battle, Davidge and Drac pilot Jereba Shigan, played by Louis Gossett Jr., engage in a dogfight, which results in them both crash landing on Phyrine 4, it's a planet. After initial hostilities where they viciously hunt one another, the two team up to cooperate to survive. Over the next 3 years, they become friends, each saving the other's lives several times. Davidge, haunted by dreams of spaceships landing on the planet, leaves in search of help. He finds evidence of humans, but learns that the planet has only periodically been visited by human miners known as scavengers who use Drax as slave labor. He returns to warn Jereba, nicknamed Jerry, only to discover that Jerry is now with child. Drax are hermaphroditic, and reproduce asexually. To pass the time, Davidge and Jerry memorize each other's ancestry, agreeing that Davidge's lineage is very thin. Jerry later dies in childbirth, but not before making Davidge swear to take the child, Zamis, or Bumper, played by Bumper Robinson, back to the Drac home world and recite the Shigan lineage so the child can join Drac society. Davidge raises Zamis, who calls him uncle. One day a ship flies overhead and Davidge goes to investigate. Zamis is curious and follows. He is discovered by a pair of scavengers. Davidge attacks the man, but Zamis inadvertently stands between Davidge and one miner, and Davidge is gunned down. Later, a BTA patrol ship finds Davidge apparently dead and returns him to his base station. During an impersonal funeral ceremony, Davidge suddenly awakens, speaking Drac in his confused state. He is later reinstated to duty, but not as a pilot, as his superiors want to make sure he has not defected to the Drax. Unable to get help in rescuing Zamis, Davidge steals a ship to find the child by himself. He manages to find the scavenger ship and sneak aboard. Davidge speaks to the Drax slaves in their own language. They know about Zamis and realize he is uncle. Davidge enters the facility, fighting one miner after another, and the slaves revolt. Towards the end of the battle, they are assisted by the BTA crew who pursued the stolen ship. In the epilogue, Davidge and Zamis are on the Drac homeworld, and when in the fullness of time, Zamis brought his own child before the Holy Council, the name of Willis Davidge was added to the line of Jereba. So here we have sort of a predictive programming, subliminals to get us used to working with the reptilians, and maybe even adopting reptilians as one of our own here. It's an interesting movie. It starts off with aggression towards each other, but then becomes passive. They become passive with each other and go on their adventure. But again, it's just kind of a scene, out of creation, and what we're looking to always is the awareness that is, and how we can, recognize this awareness. So let's see what we can do with this movie and how we can become more aware with it. And I'll give it to Kevin here, the next part of our show here.
The opening narration would proclaim how the human race was now at peace, working together and exploring space. But then they would come across another alien species, the Drac, and both species then would embroil themselves in a conflict over the resources and the territory of their shared creational realm, because naturally there are more than just the human body types in creation. There are endless expressions of body types and forms for awareness to animate, and all for the same overall purpose, to recognize the true reality, the isness life is, from the comparison that everything in the created, simulated realms provide. Each individual awareness goes through their creational process. They go through the various animal body types, at that point directly connected to the real awareness that animates them, until they assume a body vehicle that has additional, literal mental capacity that allows then free will self-deciding. And so instead of being in direct connection with the real awareness, and then every action making sense with life, with the real awareness that operates the body type, in other words, just a being state and doing what is necessary for body vehicle survival, the additional mental facility and the utilizing of it results in the removing of the individual from the nowness of the real awareness connection and position, and into the simulated illusion bubble effects of the ideas, considerations, convictions, and assumptions created through the mechanics of the literal aspect of the body vehicle. All fine if an individual retains the real awareness connection, activates through the personal self, effects experience, then returns to the real awareness, nowness state. But beings become lost in their illusions as they continue to indulge the facilities of idea creation, and rather become encased in their own simulation of illusions. Now becomes then an awareness split, the personal awareness locked in its simulated illusion, and the real awareness that is everything but that which is disconnected from. And the individual then flounders around with its creations, which, due to the detaching from a state of being where one automatically knows how to make sense with life and the awareness that it is, now creates ideas which, if they are not supporting of life and awareness, which practically all of the detached personal self's choice of idea creation will invariably be, as it seeks to gratify the sensation body, and all that it does is a personal self-serving, so will such ideas be distortions. But as per the design of the simulators, that which we decide, the ideas we create, are like programs we place into a computer, which is the consciousness, and then the effects, the experiences that reflect the nature of the programmed ideas rather pop up on our computer screens, that we have designed our computer game through the ideas inserted into the consciousness, and now the personal awareness sits in the simulation that stems from it, and yes, this awareness split, this lost in the illusions of the simulator idea, is essential, that we then have our references, our comparisons, simulated literal experiences, that we can recognize what is real, the isness life is, which is an everything that all our simulated creations are not. And so individuals' personal self-awareness will make their choices, their decisions, their illusions, and as everything equals itself, everything balances out, as we are what we decide, focus on, and intend, and this plays out in sequences of time phases on the physical level, as us becoming that, and experiencing how we have constructed the consciousness. The drawn-out experience of cause to effect over time phases is again a decided illusion, as in reality everything is what it has decided to be in every moment, but the effects show up in due course, maybe not immediately, but they will be so. So then our situations, where we find ourselves positioned in creation, and our body types, are all by our design, as the deciders of our consciousness construction, which effects our simulation. Species become so, alien races, as the consciousness of individuals match up with their decided construction, and so they will find themselves in similar or the same body types, environments, and positions in creation. They then are inclined to form groups based on similar consciousness attitudes and ideas. They must be similar, or they wouldn't be sharing the same body types or environments. Then the groups become entire races, formulating their social collective consciousness that all will agree with, as survival is greater in numbers than alone, and with agreements and ideas locked into an individual's consciousness that are those of a certain species, so then is that individual rather tied, tap-lined with that species, and may have many lifetimes with it, for our experience always is our consciousness, and ideas that are based on a particular species will be affecting experience with the species and into future lifetimes also. But an individual is never resigned to one species. All it takes is a certain idea, agreement, focus, and the effects of such can very readily have such an individual in a completely different position in creation, and different body type the next lifetime around. All social consciousnesses of all collective species will have differences according to what is decided, the attitudes, drives, etc. And so, if our decided consciousness matches that of the consciousness of a certain species, it's very likely that is then a potential species we may become a part of. As the movie begins, we see how both species seem rather warlike, very attitude-driven, so really very little difference in the consciousness. All unconscious, unaware beings who haven't recognized how creation has unlimited potential and room for everyone and the ideas they wish to experience. And so this mentality has species seeking to suppress others or squabble over resources, when in reality we are all this same real awareness, trying to recognize the isness that we are through the process of creation. And all the drama and back and forth is rather unnecessary, and it does cause a lot of emotional trauma and karmic entanglements, which have the warring species and individuals rather locked into each other's simulation, and likely to carry on their hostilities toward each other into endless future lifetimes and positions, until these attachments, agreements, and the hostile, aggressive nature of them, the emotional component that enhances all agreements and attachments, are released. But then it's all experience, regardless of the form it takes, and every experience is a reference for recognizing the ease, and also as that which we learn that we don't need, and so we can refine our choices, decisions, and agreements that make more sense with life, and stop revolving in very limiting simulated situations. As we do need to get through creation, we do need to become more aware for this to be so, and constantly experiencing the same thing will not be an aid for awareness, for to become more aware rather demands that we experience that which we haven't before, that we can eventually recognize our real awareness, become fully aware, and in recognition of that which we really are, then recognize the is from the only place It can be recognized from the real awareness that is a part of it, which is the real purpose for all beings, regardless of the body types, for being in the simulators in the first place.
I noticed that the Dracos have the same they could just as well be humans with different body types. The way they're acting and their consciousness was very similar to the humans in the movie. So I see this as like, again, kind of a subliminal or kind of an agenda with the movie. This is my view that they're pushing the asexual thing because this fellow was he was a male, but he could have babies. They're asexual, both. I guess a female can have babies too, or they're not female or male. They're just asexual, so they can all have babies. But this is what's being pushed these days: this kind of a transgenderism idea, test tube babies in vitro, just kind of like desexualize everything as part of the reptilian kind of agenda. Interesting, I've had these two experiences come my way from these people that had test tube entities come from the sky down into the earth. They're being introduced to the earth in test tubes. There's something with that I see. But tampering with the genetic code and all that, that's like the reptilians kind of game. And they, of course, they can't, they have different body types, but they're trying to intermingle, and they have been for a long time with the humans. So there's all a setup. This movie, I see it as something about that in some way or another, getting people prepared for interaction with them. Maybe again, gathering agreement from the humans, you could say. Because like Dwayne says, they could take over, but it's much easier if there's agreement and it lasts longer. And if people comply, they can be had for many lifetimes in the future too, not just this one, with that agreement. So agreement is the most valuable thing for the reptilians and the controllers, whoever you think they are. Elites, the bankers, the cabal, they're all, there's a hierarchy, and it's a big organization, organized control system. I guess that's it for me. And Nakaya, you're welcome to chime in too if you have any thoughts or comments or questions. Did you see the movie at all, Nakaya?
Yeah, I might have seen it on the Inner Planes.
1985.
Yeah.
It was an old one.
Those were Inner Planes back then, weren't they?
Yeah, well, with Star Wars, that decade.
Well, as we were talking and I was tuning into you this morning, what came to me, was so many beings in my life or in anybody's life are reshaped experiences between myself and others. And in our culture, we tend to think of things as past, present, and future, but it goes way beyond that. It's not past, present, and future, but the way our minds are set up, we can only accept certain paradigms. And actually, our experiences can all and do all become all at once in the present. So if I see you, or I see a friend of mine who I knew from 1965, and there's a resonance or a closeness between you and, say, me and my friend from 1965, you might have blue eyes and blonde hair, and that person might have green eyes and brown hair. and they may talk differently, but it's actually the same being, but in different embodiments. And so, yeah, we pull those in as we need that experience of beingness. We reshape matter, time, and space, and cellular structures, and energy to manifest another being or beingness. It could be my dog that looks like Bruno right now, or my dog that looked and acted like Molly. And who's to say that's not the same being, but in a different shape and time, because we don't know how to handle presence, and shifting of states and shifting of relationships. And so this is how we do it in the human state. But if you're in a different, if you recreated yourself as a being from Venus or another dimension, you may have a totally different anomaly. And so people tend to think they're lonely, but they're not lonely. They can call in anything at any moment. And look what happened when I called you this morning. It was the craziest thought. I said, oh, I'm all alone, except I do have Bruno, and I have my friend who's staying here and watches Bruno. And I'm thinking, oh, well, I wonder what that person that begins with a V, I wonder what's happening with him. And I called you in, and here you are, and I'm staring at your face. And how did that happen? You know, and as humans, we don't even look at those things as miracles or miraculous or unusual or different, or how did we do that? We immediately attribute the responsibility to, oh, it's our technology. Oh, that's bullshit. That's not our technology. We are the technology that just perpetrated that experience on matter, space, and time. And I could go on and on forever, or not.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you know, all this is an illusion that we're separate. You know, it's even this guy, this Draco said, you are alone with yourself. He told Dennis Quaid, you were alone with yourself because you've separated your sexes. You know, sexes. So we're more one with ourselves. But this whole matrix is like about separation, division, and that's where war comes in, and the aggravation and toward each other, and just to keep people apart so they're distracted from what's really real. And I just have a story here. It's kind of on the side, but I was with dinner with these people last night, and the man was from Buenos Aires, Argentina. And in December of 2001, they had a big economic meltdown in Argentina. And they had five presidents within 2 weeks. I mean, it was just turnover. And they were rioting in the streets. They were like, you know, breaking into stores and all that you see in the movies. And then after about a month, though, people started kind of, hey, you know, what do we have to do this for? You know, like, let's work together, support each other, use bartering system. You know, we don't have the economy, we don't have the dinero or the money anymore. So why not just, you know, build a community and support each other instead of fighting over stuff? And by the way, why do we even need government? Why do we even need these guys? So actually the government officials, if they knew about them, they weren't even allowed in restaurants or in meetings. They just ousted the government. And then they were doing okay, but then finally the government, with their influence, probably from, you know, US and all, they did get back into power slowly. They talked their smooth talk into the people's consciousness again. Of course, some people do need the authoritarian figure to tell them what to do, but most, you know, a lot of people don't. And these people in Argentina kind of proved this, that people can work together. You don't need to have war. Look at the animals. They don't have standing armies and stuff. They have their little skirmishes and stuff like that. And, territory and whatever, but they don't like create armies and go to war and have destroy people's lives, or in this case, other animals' lives. It's about survival. They have a different setup. So all these movies, this one in particular, kind of it's pointing toward like, okay, making friends with the aliens. It really sounds good, but underneath it, is there an agenda? They're becoming more aware, or are they just making another, creating another position with there's a controller in the background doing something, pulling the strings.
Cool.
So
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Like look at animals. Like my friend just adopted a new dog. It took 4 tries because everybody wants dogs now and they all have to line up and the first one gets it. So she got there really early. And then she brought this dog home, and this dog, she was getting along with it fine. And then a couple of days later or so, she went to examine its feet and it nipped her and her feelings were hurt. And I said, hey, my dog Bruno did the same thing when I brought him in. And, he's big. He put his mouth on my arm, around my arm, to say, don't do that. But these dogs are willing to walk into a totally different family and explore a relationship because their beingness is much more well developed in some areas as far as forming new nucleuses, etc. Hey, we could learn something if we just shut our mouths for a while and watch what they do. My dog can get me to move from one room to the other, and all he has to do is take his body or his head and move me along. He's got me trained. He knows what to do. He doesn't have to have a big argument. What's the matter with humans? I like the idea of not having a government. I like the idea of not having money. I think, and not having locks on your doors, and actually the idea of letting go of all my treasured possessions, although that's going to take a while because I have a huge bunch of locks around that idea. But I'm getting closer. Now I've got this idea that I'm going to have a backpack with all the stuff I need on a daily basis, and that'll be part. And then I'll have a mothership, and then I'll have maybe 2 other. But I'm getting closer to walking away and just, saying adios. But I'm not quite there yet to, my past. I like to explore the past as if it's present and available. Instead of creating something in the here and now, what the heck is the matter with me? That's my email address, isn't it?
that's right. You're proving it. Good. Thanks, Nikaya, for your input.
What became rather apparent was how the soldiers, the Drac, and the humans, by and large, probably had no personal reasons for destroying each other, but more that these were the dictates of their leaders or governing bodies. And just as it is with most species and situations of aggression toward others, this must be a marketed ploy to ensure agreement through the masses of the species involved to carry out these acts of war against each other. For the Dennis Quaid character, Davidge, would say how he hadn't even ever seen a Drac before, and undoubtedly knew nothing of their species, their decided culture and social consciousness, just as the Drac individual would likely be similarly oblivious of humans, both content to just carry out their marketed duties, to destroy each other. And as the movie develops, we see how as both begin to work together for survival on what was a very hostile planet, they begin to realize and appreciate that they really are not so different from each other, just a case of different body forms, different ideas that make up their species' collective consciousness, and indeed following different religious, spiritual ideas. But evidently both individuals had a particular, decided consciousness that would always have them in these sort of experiences and scenarios. Quite clearly then, both had rather aggressive and attitude-driven confrontational consciousnesses, or they wouldn't have found themselves in positions in life where they were at war with another species, or indeed specifically as the soldiers on the front line of it, as our experience must always be that which we have decided, as with the idea construction of the consciousness. And the individuals we share our experience and lifetimes with cannot feature in our simulation unless we have agreed that they be there. This would result in, then, open-door agreements to all those we have had emotional attachments with throughout our many lifetimes, that we can potentially feature always in each other's experiences across creation, lifetime after lifetime. But such attachments are not necessarily those based on the simulated sensation of love, or with those that we like, for we can have our karma entwined with those we dislike just as readily, those we have caused harm, or that have caused it to us. For as we engage with individuals abrasively, we are deciding on our shared experience to be along aggressive lines, and must then be the effects of the nature of what we have decided. Everything balances out accordingly, and we will find ourselves subject to a similar abrasiveness, and potentially by the hands of those we had previously imposed upon. This can go back and forth for lifetimes, as the effects, the simulations of individuals are shared, and the nature of the decided shared effect will very likely be maintained also. If we kill an individual or harm them, and we do not experience the effect reflection of our choice of idea immediately or in that lifetime, we have an outstanding effect still to be experienced that incorporates that individual. We will then encounter them again in another lifetime, and although neither conscious of these prior hostilities of shared experience, the underlying subconscious disdain or dislike will be there, and motivate the individuals to resume the drama. If we killed someone, we will have to experience effects of a similar nature. We have set the stage for our own harm or death, and so the circumstances will be just right for the one we have killed or harmed to be able to do the same with us. So really, we had decided to experience that particular effect by virtue of us deciding what we did. But although then the individual we had harmed is in the perfect position to carry out harm to us, and will be subconsciously driven to do so, it still falls on them to make that decision and carry it out, or to break the cycle. So that the Dennis Quaid character, Davidge, would find himself specifically in this situation with the Drac individual could only have been so through agreements and attachments established prior to they finding themselves in each other's experience again, and trapped on the hostile planet. And it's very apparent as to the nature of their attachment. Two individuals caught in tapline drama entanglements, that for it to play out again, as it must continuously until resolved, until the individuals decided differently, then the species they each find themselves in, and that both species are engaged in war, is the perfect arena for them to encounter each other again, and play out their shared and decided simulation of a conflict, drama, and abrasiveness toward one another. And as I said, the situation where Davidge was at the mercy of the Drac, who captured the human initially on the planet, and so was in a position where the Drac could have killed Davidge, suggested it was very likely the human who had harmed or killed the Drac in a previous lifetime, and now the effect was the Drac in a position where he could return the favour, so to speak. But instead, at that moment, he elected not to kill the human, and so effectively broke the cycle. And as the movie progresses, we see the resolution come to be, a resolution that may never have taken place had their survival not depended on it. So perhaps a subconscious underlying idea or agreement with both, that they really wanted an end to their lifetimes of squabbling, and although not recognized consciously, as they would have no conscious memory of their entanglements lifetime to lifetime, this notion, this want, must have been seeded for their experience to play out as it did, that they would meet again, engage in drama as they always do, but the circumstances demanded that they put aside their hostilities, and this shift in consciousness, although maybe still retaining attachment with each other, that will play out in future lifetimes, at least it won't be of an abrasive nature, and as Davidge would see more of the abrasiveness of his own human species against the Drac, the slave camps, etc., he would come to appreciate how all individuals on both sides were suffering as a result of a war that really wasn't necessary. And this, too, would very likely shift his consciousness, have ideas decided that may have not only his future experience in his present lifetime on a different course, but that of future lifetimes also, rather than constantly cycling in very confrontational simulated scenarios and racking up a lot of severe karma through his abrasive deeds that he would then be the effects of in equal measure. So again, with the process of creation, part of which is to learn to make better choices that support life and all awareness in all its forms, and not destructive or abrasive toward it. And when the drac produced its baby, this was very symbolic of a new idea. And as Davidge the human would agree to take care of it and raise it, so would this overall idea be rather a shift in his consciousness from one of destruction and warlike attitude to one of caring, nurturing, of supporting life. For babies and children, with the purity and sincerity they embody, are a good representation of the isness, of a reality aside from distortion, and so the supporting of this baby drac could be construed as a representation of a consciousness now more aligned with what makes sense with life, the supporting of awareness rather than the restricting and controlling of it through acts and decisions of destruction.
The karma, yeah, he broke the karma, the chain of a karma by not getting rid of what's his name, Quaid there. So it's agreement, he no longer agreed. So it's agreement. With agreement and awareness, you can bypass the karma. You might have to face something, but be willing to face it, but then no longer agree to it. Make the decision not to have that agreement, that relationship to it, so that way you can get on with things and not have that baggage anymore. And then the war thing again. Dwayne talks about this. How much does it? I mean, it takes a lot to start a war. Think if you may not like your neighbor and stuff, but you're not going to go out and build warships and all these things that happen, like the Pearl Harbor and Gulf of Tonkin, 9/11. These are all triggers to prompt people to go to war. But even World War II with the U.S., I mean, was it 42 or something? They entered and the war was over in 3 years, but they already had all these tanks and airplanes and everything built up. They were already preparing for it. How could they so suddenly, have all these military tools at their beckon? They must have been planning for it. And they do. They plan for these things. It takes a lot to plan a war and to get people out there to wave their flag and be patriotic and all that. It just takes a lot, because most people are just like, they just want to live their life, and they don't need that kind of thing. When I was on the hike from Mexico to Canada with my son, people were, in the same mind frame. They weren't out to get each other. They were just like, they knew they had the same needs, basically food, water, shelter. And you saw that in each other, and you would help each other if you needed to. It's just kind of natural. It's not natural just to start bashing someone's head in, for basically no reason. So this is like, this is something set up, to cause discord and to basically, it's a control factor, and we don't need it. So what we're doing here with the new presentation is offering people another viewpoint. The world doesn't have to be the way it is. People think this is evolution or this is progress, but really it doesn't have to be this way. And it's just all about agreement, agreeing to the systems or agreeing to something wonderful or something real or something that makes sense, your choice. It doesn't have to be this way. It would take a lot for it to turn around, a whole lot of agreement, because most of this agreement to the demise of the planet is subconscious. So people would really have to take a look at themselves and what they're agreeing to and deciding to make it work. But it's possible. That's why we're here. Look at the real guides like Paul Twitchell, Dwayne, Rebbe. They may have some, disagreements, but basically everybody's focused on this isness, this awareness, this reality. So that's why each of us could do the same thing. We support each other because we have the same intent, just like the hikers, food, water, shelter, they had the same focus. So same with everybody here with the new presentation and the real guides, they have the focus, to become more aware of this reality and support it. And if everybody does that, then what happens, any kind of aggravation or something is like whatever, you just deal with it, get beyond, get over it and keep the focus. So a lot of people fall out of this because they lose the focus. They go back into their personal self and all the drama that's going on with that. But if you maintain the focus, the adventure is there, and for everybody that wants to participate and contribute, it's there. And somebody said, either Dwayne or Rebizar said, I think it was Dwayne said, we have the most fun. If you're with the real guides, we have the most fun. It really is. It's a good time. It could be challenging, of course, but it's nowhere else do you find this kind of adventure and fun. Certainly not in creation. You can have your thrills and spills and all that, but this is the real thing here. So I'm sure, Nakai, you have something to add to that too?
What just occurred to me was I was looking at plants. There's so many different kind of yellow flowered weeds, plants, whatever you want to call them. And there's this one, and they were saying what it does is it branches off from the main stem and it creates effectively it's its own plant. And as you were talking, I was thinking, oh yeah, we can do that at any time. We don't need to stay with this particular stem. We can branch off and become our own plants. And today this book popped up. It's been around for a while, but I hadn't really looked at it. And in it, this child is creating a whole world. She made her umbrella into a mushroom at one point, and then she made it into whatever. She was very bored, and her mother said, well, go off and have an umbrella day. And she thought, well, I don't want to, and she stomped off. But somehow, some spirit inside of her started using the umbrella so that she actually had adventures. Toadstools showed up and bears, and the water showed up in the wind, and the umbrella changed into a boat, you name it. And she just went off, and she had her own worlds happening. And I thought, yeah, that's what I used to do as a kid. We would jump off into the Eskimo land when there was snow outside, and we would make igloos, and we'd be outside all day. And then our parents would say, isn't it cold? And we'd say, cold? What's cold? What's cold got to do with it? Yeah, because we were in our own world already. We come in here, so many of us were already in our own world, and then they strip it off of us and hand us keys and say, "You got this is the only way to get to the world. You have to have these keys. You have to have this amount of money, and you have to read all these books about government. Government. Oh my God." So we all know what that's about, and I really like that idea of just running off and somebody was saying, "How do you become a breatharian?" I said, "I don't know, but I'm going to check it out."
Yeah, we can always establish our own position. You know, we don't have to
It's
take the
11
position
o'clock.
of other people's creations. We can
It's
do our own.
11 o'clock.
Yeah, it's 11 o'clock. Yeah. So,
Oh,
yeah, so that's, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Nikaya. Thank you,
thank
Kevin.
you.
And we end this show with a new you. You're welcome to do that with us or not, but goes like this.
Sure.
New you. Kevin? Kaya?
Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, yes. And Kevin? Thanks, everybody. That was Reel to Reel. We did the Enemy Mine today. How about the Fifth Wave next week? The Fifth Wave, 2016.
Never heard of it, but I'm sure I can find it somewhere.
It's about a strange virus that is let loose in the public. This is 2016. It sure looks like the one we got now going on. But this is interesting. That would come out 4 years, 5 years before the corona.